Hello, everyone in the internet world. I'm Robert with Nomium, and this is another edition of Business Casual, where we talk to professionals in many different industries to hear a little bit about their work and their background. Today, I'm joined by Scott Dutton. He is a professional facilitator and trainer doing a lot this year online, like all of us. Scott was also voted as Breakthrough Speaker of the Year by the Professional Speakers of Australia. Did I get that right, Scott?
You did very well. It's a lot of words.
I had to look down at my notes quickly to remember the name of the organization.
I don't even know if I'd get it that good. So no, you did well, Robert. Very nice.
Well, Scott, thank you. Thank you for being here today. You know yourself better than I know you. So why don't I ask you to give your own bio and introduction?
Sure, no problem. So my background, I was born in Melbourne, in Australia, and ended up doing going through high school. I did a social work degree and a science degree. Sort of had a bit of a break in between, but they're the two degrees. And then I ended up practicing as a mediator with parent-adolescent conflict. So I was actually in the sort of non-profit homelessness sector, trying to assist young people to reconnect with family and prevent youth homelessness. So I did that for about 8 or 9 years. And then we moved from Melbourne up to Byron Bay. And then I started more focusing on workplace disputes. I've got a little picture of Byron Bay, by the way. That's a beach called Waddy-Goes, and it's lovely. But yeah, we moved there about 14 years ago, and I started focusing on then workplace conflict. And so now I've done a lot of mediation in the workplace. And yeah, a few years before we moved up, we started our training company. So mainly training others in how to deal with conflict, mediate, have difficult conversations, those sort of areas. And so, yeah, I've been running training face-to-face for 17 years or so. And then obviously last year things changed. And that's when what the word is, pivot, isn't it? And actually learned through you guys. I sort of, in fact, it was quite interesting because I was quite resistant to virtual. I remember an organization asked me to do it once, and I was like, oh, no, okay, I will if I have to. And but then when everything cancelled and I had no work, I had about 30 bookings cancelled within a week or so in March 2020. And then I thought, right, what am I going to do? This is the only way out. I think I've got to learn about this virtual stuff. And that's when I actually found you guys, you and Josh and Melanie, and started learning from you and going, okay, this can actually be very engaging. And, so I decided I was going to get good at this stuff. I thought, right, if I'm going to do it, I want to make it as engaging as face-to-face. And so that's been my journey up until now.
Oh, that's great to hear, because I feel similar in the past when I was doing virtual. The clients weren't using video. It was very just, here's a PowerPoint slide, what are your thoughts about it? And then half the people aren't even replying because it's not engaging. So, I love the fact that over the last year, there's been this huge push to be on video, do something, say something, write something, draw something. I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than I ever have in the past.
Yeah, no, and it's fabulous. So like even things like, as you say, the drawing, the annotate, you get people, I show a slide and I say, can you just get on annotate? And you obviously have to explain how to do that, but then they jump on and they just love it. I just go wild, just do whatever you like on my slide. And they just do all these crazy wild drawings. But there's so many ways I think I've learned, because I've now done, since March last year, I've done 140 virtual training. So I've learned so many little ways, not only the internal stuff within Zoom, but there's all those little external apps that I think really add to it as well. So I've learned all those little tricks, I guess, to keep people engaged for a whole day. So I do a lot of one-day trainings virtually now.
Excellent. Do you do the full day online?
Yeah, full day,
That's
and I do.
that's tough,
I do.
man. That's hardcore.
But you know what I've learned? I've learned that you have to have very regular breaks. So I will. I want people to be on video the whole time. So that's a requirement, but I give people a break every hour, and for 10, 15 minutes, and they have a good break at lunchtime. And I'm finding that if you can keep it engaging for the rest of the time, people are fine. And some people have said they prefer virtual than face to face, which is nice.
I mean, especially if you've worked with people and you say, please have a comfortable workstation. You know, have your drink,
Yes.
have your coffee, have
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Have a footrest, have a little stool under your desk so you can actually stretch your legs if you're just sitting there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't have a problem with people eating and stuff as well. It's like, look, that's fine. As long as we can see you and, you don't talk with your mouth full, obviously. But I find it very challenging when people don't want to put their video on, and because I feel it affects the whole group dynamic. And if you throw some people into a breakout room and you got one person without their video on, I think that's really difficult to have that conversation and really sort of connect with that person as well. So that's almost a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah, how do you? I want to ask a follow-up question about that. How do you prompt your participants in advance to be ready for that? Instead of
Yeah.
obviously you just show up and you're like, turn on your video now, and they're like, what? I had no idea.
What? I was just going to
Yeah,
slack off today. I was just
they're
going to
like,
be an observer.
yeah, they're like, I'm driving right now. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I have had that. I've had one person actually driving with their video on in a training, which was a little concerning. Anyway, I send, and I can't remember if I learned this from you guys, but I think it was Josh and yourself, where you'd send out something prior. I was coming to one of your sessions and you'd send, I think it was Josh actually, sent out something prior, and it was very specific about the requirements to come.
Mhm.
So from that, I've based it on that, and now I actually do a Zoom test. I do a 5-minute Zoom test, and I ask people to come prior to the training. I give a couple of options and say, I just want you to jump on for a couple of minutes. I want to check your camera, check your sound, make sure everything's working before we get to the day. And in those instructions, I got a whole email on it. They do mentees and Jamboards beforehand, so they get used to the app, but also get to understand what they're most interested in or what they find most challenging about that topic. But also in the instructions, it is, hey, these are all the requirements for you guys. This is what I'm expecting on the day. So video on, you've updated your Zoom to the latest version. That it's a very interactive training. It's not me just talking, it's people participating. So I've got a fairly lengthy email of requirements with a nice smiley face at the end. So
well, and I'm guessing that most people, once they go through the session with seeing everyone else on video, they really feel that connection is back. It's
yeah,
not boxes with a name on it anymore. It's actually faces they can get to know.
yeah, and it becomes expected. I mean, as soon as people come into a training, I do a couple of very small things, and then I'll throw them straight into a breakout room, find something in common, and find and have a chat to your partner about what you're hoping to gain. So it's straight away they're engaging in it, and there's an expectation that you can see each other when you do that. So I'm creating that expectation before and right at the start.
Well, we mentioned earlier when we were chatting before we were doing the recording, we were mentioning I can't even talk today. We were mentioning using some different apps, things like online whiteboards. You mentioned Jamboards, there's Miro, there's other ones. Sometimes we have participants who may not be willing to try something new, or they just are, a little bit technologically behind than the rest of the rest of the group. What do you do when you encounter a little bit of resistance or just even a little bit of inexperience?
Yeah, I'm pretty patient. So I guess I want to demonstrate patience, because I understand some people are really comfortable and quite fluent. And then others are really like, what is this? This is overwhelming for me. So what I start off with is usually apps and tools that are easy to use. So something like Jamboard, where I've onboarded them beforehand. I've got them to fill in what they're hoping to gain on a Jamboard. And then when we come together, I do some group agreements where I explain how to do it as well, to show them the menu. And I want you to just pop on something that's going to help you feel comfortable today. And then by the time they get to a breakout room where they might be filling in a question about what's the challenge with this, or, you know, some brainstorming activity where they do it with others, they've now done it twice before they get to sort of having to work it out themselves a little bit. But even then, what I like about breakout rooms with Jamboard or Miro or whatever you're going to use is I like how you can share, you have one person share their screen and then everybody can see each other and they're brainstorming together. And what that means is you actually only need one person in each room who's somewhat tech savvy to be able to share their screen, jump on, be able to fill it in, but people are doing it, brainstorming together, which is a really good way to connect and interesting to share their wisdom as well.
I really like that method. I've done similar where I've asked, you know, let's say we have 50 people. I've asked for 10 people who will reply and say, I've used this app, I've used this whiteboard, I'm comfortable with it. I say, you are now the breakout room leaders. Hopefully everyone else can use it, but if you have those people who say, hey, it's not working, or I didn't do any of the pre-session activities to learn this, it's okay. Your leader will add ideas for you.
Yeah, that's it. That's the way to do it. And you're always going to have someone who's, and then what I do, especially on the first time when they go into a breakout room and they're using a new app, I'll jump in there and I'll just go, how are you going? Do you need any help? And so I just jump into each room and just check they're on board and they're sharing it and it's all working well. So I usually give them a couple of extra minutes in those ones, so they've got that time to just sort of figure it out. But most of the time they're able to do it themselves.
Excellent. Well, in your long career, you said you've been doing face-to-face facilitation for 17 years.
Yes.
And you know, especially recently, a lot of virtual, and winning the prestigious Breakthrough Speaker of the Year award. Whether it was in person, live, face-to-face training, or online, can you think of a story that you could share with us that's either insightful or just crazy or funny? Anything that stands out that happened that we could maybe learn from or at least laugh at?
I did have one recently where, I mean, I've probably lots of things I could try to remember, but I did have one recently where I was, it was a face-to-face. It was actually on Magnetic Island, which is a nice little island off the coast of Queensland. And so we're not doing a lot of face-to-face this year. I did 90% virtual last year. I'm at probably did about 60 trainings the first half of this year. So I had actually 20 face-to-face and 40, I think it's 41 virtual. So it's gone up a little bit, but still not as much face-to-face. Anyway, so this was exciting because I've got to get on a plane and then a boat over to the island. And so I turned it to 2-day trainings for leaders, and they're wanting to learn about emotional intelligence and difficult conversations. And I get there in the morning, everybody comes in, and then I had this extra person on my list, and I said to the organizer, I said, oh, where's this leader? Are they not coming? And then another fellow pipes up and goes, oh, that's right. He's in isolation because he's been in Victoria or somewhere. He didn't have COVID, but he had to be in isolation, so he couldn't come. He said, but I'm going to get him on my computer. So we Zoomed him in, and it was just the most interesting and fun experience because he was on a computer and people were putting him on their lap or on the chair next to him, and he was totally engaged in the training. So we had this sort of hybrid thing that I didn't know about was going to happen. But he was really comical. So he's looking up at the person like this.
I think you shared, did you share this picture on LinkedIn?
I did.
Okay, now this makes sense. Yes, I saw the visual with that. That's awesome.
And it was just fun. And so he was there the whole 2 days, and occasionally I had to send him something that he couldn't do, that, you know, I'd have to send him the Menti separately to everyone else, or things like that. But it was just a really enjoyable experience. I thought it might be tricky. The only thing I didn't have was the mute button close enough to me. I had to try to mute him, but I
He's
was in
over on
the, yeah, anyway.
he's on the other side of the room just telling stand-up comedy jokes.
He was a good storyteller. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was fun.
That brings to my mind, I think I'm seeing this. Let me know if you're seeing this, and I'm hoping it's something that we see even when we transition back into more face to face. But with so much disruption in people's lives, but also with the type of training and facilitating we're doing, these moments where we just have to improvise, something goes wrong, something unexpected, and people just have to roll with it.
Yes.
I'm seeing people be more adaptable, especially online, and I'm hoping that transitions back into just physical offices and workplaces. How do you
Yes.
see that with your clients and participants?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, I've got a keynote next week for 500 or 600 business managers from schools. It's across the border. So I'm in Byron in New South Wales, and it's just on the Gold Coast, which is only an hour away. But we're in different states. And at the moment, there's some COVID happening in Sydney and Melbourne and a few spots here and there. And it's sort of like, will I get over there? And the organizer just said the other day, okay, if you can't get across, can you do it virtually? So they were really open to me doing it from home, doing it virtually, and still having the delegates. Most of them are from Queensland, so they'll still have face-to-face people there. They'll have presenters coming and being live there, but I'll be doing it maybe. I don't know. I still don't know where, if I'm going to be here or there, but I've got to prepare for both, which is interesting. But a lot of clients now are saying, okay, like I just got a request today for 4 workshops on difficult conversations for their leaders. And they said, look, we'd really like to have a face-to-face. Let's plan for that. But if you can't get here for, because of restrictions, we'll make it virtual. And that to me is a smart way to do it. They prefer face-to-face. Let's try and make it happen. If I can't get there, we do it virtual, and then it's sort of locked in, and I'm really happy with that.
Excellent. Have you been having to do not just with one participant on a tablet or something, but have you dove into hybrid much, where you have 10 people live face to face and 10 people online?
Yeah, the funny thing, I haven't. I was part of a sort of one with my speaking agency where they did that. They had people live in the studio. I did a pre-record. There was others doing live virtual. So that was really interesting experiment. I haven't actually done it yet where I've been in the room with both, but I did, funnily enough, I did it about 7 years ago with a mob up in Northern Territory with the Indigenous for the Prime Minister and Cabinet's office. And they have workers all around the region, which can be 100, 200, 500 kilometers away. And so they did it quite frequently where they had people, I had some from Catherine and some from all these way out places that they had dialed in on video. And then we had the people in the room as well. And I do remember that because I had to be really mindful about keep on incorporating those guys on video. But you have to they had a really good quality speaker in the room too that could pick up everyone. And I think that was a big key to it as well. It's you as a facilitator being mindful about drawing those guys in who are on the 3 or 4 different videos. But it's also about people being able to hear them. Everybody had to be able to hear each other. I think that's the biggest consideration.
Yeah, that's huge. We've done some virtual where it was a group of people in a room and they were sharing maybe one laptop. And there's people in the back of the room and they're saying something and they don't know that we can't hear them.
Yeah.
And this was something where usually we test and we try to predict these things. This day we did not know this was going to happen. And it
Yeah.
absolutely, we just had to tell them, you have to walk up to your microphone if you're in that location. So we
Yeah.
want your ideas, we want to include you, but you sitting around casually at the other side of the conference table isn't going to work because the room
Yeah.
isn't set up for it. And again, it's something that we could have worked with ahead of time to try to manage that, to get those
Yeah.
conference room speakers or something. But hey, that's that adaptability that we have
Yeah.
to work with. You know,
Yeah.
you're gonna
Yeah.
have to get up
That's
and
it.
walk around if you want to contribute.
Yeah, that's it. And I think the flexibility, I mean, I think that's one thing from COVID is that we've had to learn to be really flexible, you know, how I think it'd be really difficult for conference organizers, how flexible and how much they have to change and, you know, adapt to the situation is very challenging, I think. But certainly as a facilitator, trainer, that's what I've had to do. And I think, you know, back in March last year, that was a big part of it. It was learning it, but it was also the mindset of going, well, actually, I'm going to really make this work, you know, and being open to that and embracing it. And I think that's what's helped me to be able to sort of make it work as well.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and I think that's a great. I think it's a great tip for people who want to get into either not even just facilitating and training, even just
Yes.
hosting meetings, hosting these
Yeah.
conversations. If you want
Yes.
more, if you want more than just mute on and off, and you want to do any kind of work together, collaborating
Yep.
together,
Yeah.
there has to be this idea that there are multiple options. You've chosen one, and if that breaks, option
Yep.
2, 3, 4 do exist if you're willing to adapt to
Yep.
them.
Yep. That's it. It's adapting.
Well, speaking of, I got just I have just a couple of questions left for you today. One of them is, what virtual tools or apps have you found a lot of success with lately, whether you've used them for a long time or maybe it's just something you stumbled upon recently? What could you tell
Yes.
anyone watching this who says, I'm looking for a new tech tip?
Look, I mean, doing a lot of research, looking all through your website too. You've got great videos on that as well. Probably what I ended up finding is that, you know, you want to practice a lot, just check them all out. But then I've ended up probably just really focusing on 3 or 4 core ones that I use all the time and I'm very comfortable with them. So probably the biggest ones I use are Jamboard and Mentimeter. There's so many options within Mentimeter with scaling and you know, polls and just word clouds and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Even getting feedback I do sometimes for a short training or halfway through a training, I might say what stood out and what else do you want more of. Just very simple. And then I've also been using a slide for a quiz, which I find a lot of fun. People love the quiz. And the funny thing is, I've been now, as I do a little bit more face-to-face, I've been using some of this stuff that I've been doing virtually in my face-to-face. And one of the things I've been doing is using a quiz. So we do a whole lot of training on a topic like difficult conversations. And then towards the end, I say, okay, we've got a quiz. Let's see how much you've learned today. But I often get them into pairs, so they're doing it together, and that's a bit more fun as well. So they're probably my main, and I use Wheel of Names as well after a break for a bit of fun, share a fun fact. But they're the core ones I use, and that's, you know, I think that's the thing too. You can know hundreds of apps, but you really just got to use enough to keep people engaged all the time and know them really well so you're comfortable with them.
Absolutely. That reminds me, I've done some speaking engagements, really short speaking engagements, you know, maybe 10 minutes. And
Yep.
it's in a room that doesn't have any projector set up. And I don't want them to. I don't want to use a projector. But Mentimeter works so well, and these other apps that where everyone can access it on their phone. So I
Yeah.
just simply bring pieces of paper that have the code or even the QR code on there, and they're sitting there in the room, and I can push the slides to them. I can get, you know, their feedback, their ideas during my presentation, and I never have to get their eye contact up on the projector.
Yep.
Anything, it's okay, now look at your phone, and then we can
Yeah.
get them back, their attention back on the stage. So it's great to see how we are going to bring these
Yeah.
virtual tools into that live face-to-face
Yeah.
environment again.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's cool. It's just adding to that as well, you know.
Mhm. Well, the last question I have for you today, Scott,
Yeah.
is who should contact you and how can they reach you? And we will put your links and social media contact information in the video description.
Cool.
Also, if you have any other ideas you want to share that I didn't get to today, the rest of this time is yours to spill whatever beans you want.
Well, look, my company's called Fighting Fair, so it's obviously my trainings around conflict mediation, difficult conversations, and team culture. That's sort of the areas I do as a experienced mediator, and I guess it's about whoever feels that's helpful. I mean, I have a lot of HR and different organisations wanting their staff trained in how to deal with conflict, or probably most common one now is difficult conversations, because if we can't have those, it does create sort of a lot of drama often.
Mhm.
So it's about that skill in having that conversation. So so anyone who feels that would be helpful, then they're more than welcome to contact me. And probably the only other thing I was going to mention is that I've done so much virtual training now that I sort of started to get asked to run training on how to run virtual training. So I've put together a training day on how to get really good as a virtual facilitator, and recently put together some criteria for assessment to become a certified virtual trainer. So that's my latest exciting thing.
Sounds excellent. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time and being here with us on Business Casual. And anybody who's watching this, if you would like to be featured on Business Casual, or there's somebody you would like to refer, or even just a type of person, if you say, hey, you know what, we have never interviewed any professional chefs. We will do our best to find one. I don't know why we would interview a professional chef, but hey, whatever
As
the
long as they
viewers.
cook you a meal, Robert, is that right? As long as
Yeah,
they
virtually, yes. Although hopefully we can do some more face-to-face in the near future, at least with people who are located in our, at least in Hong Kong. Scott, you're welcome to fly over to Hong Kong if you want to sit through the
up to.
quarantine. Yeah.
They won't let me out.
Well, thank you again, Scott, and have an excellent day.
Thanks for having me, Robert. Lovely.
Bye. Bye.